Good evening. My name is Deborah Hodges. I am the program manager for the Institute of Medicine of Chicago, and I'm so glad that you are with us this evening. This is the Mentoring and Networking Group. This is a part of a grant that is funded by the Ortho Sprague Memorial Institute, and we're very appreciative of that offer in order to be able to bring this program to you. Today's session is Discovering Your Superpowers. We are very fortunate to have an excellent speaker with us. I'm just going to go through a couple of details as we get started here. I ask that you stay on mute until the presentation is completed, because sometimes the movement or distracting noises will come into the program. We are taping the program, so if for some reason you come in late or you need to leave a few minutes early, you'll be able to see that on the website, at a later date. Also, you're able at any time during the program to place questions or comments in the chat box, so feel free to do so, and then we'll pick them up as along the way. So let's get started here. I'm also going to be joined by Jeff Kramer, who is a program coordinator and who helps us IOMC with this particular program in the grant, and I'm very appreciative of his help overall. So the Institute of Medicine is an independent, nonprofit organization of distinguished leaders in the health field who collaborate to improve the health of the public. It draws upon the expertise of various diverse membership and other regional leaders, and it addresses critical health issues through a range of interdisciplinary approaches through education, research, communication. We share trusted information and build community engagement. So the heart and the health of IOMC is the public at its core. It's a nonprofit 501c3. We primarily focus on Chicago, the counties, and at a broader level, the state of Illinois. So let me give you a few facts on the Mentoring and Networking program. This is the first virtual session that we're hosting. We plan on having at least 4 during the year, possibly 6. It's a 2-year program. This is the first of the virtual sessions itself. We're going to be offering a half-day program with multiple speakers in the fall, September or October, and we hope that that will also be in person, so we have the best opportunity for networking and also meeting with our members, which are fellows, and we have over 200 fellows in the Chicago area itself. We'll also be developing a LinkedIn page so you can connect with one another and share thoughts and ideas. And there'll be open invitations to all of IOMC's virtual and in-person events, totally free to you as part of the grant itself. Our hope, in addition to offering some support while you're pursuing your studies and your fabulous career ahead of you, that we can also help you build a professional network in the Chicago area with our members and our invited guests that we're going to have. We'll also put on the website other resources for you to have. But if at any time you need some additional information, I hope that you will contact IOMC. I'll put my email address in the chat box, but you also have that in announcements and other things that are taking place throughout the event itself. Our upcoming, I want to just share with you our upcoming program. The next virtual one will be August 25th with Brian Willis. And Brian is a licensed social worker. He's also an educator. He has over 10 years of experience working with students and helping them excel in their studies in various areas. So I just wanted you to save the date for that particular event that's going to be coming up. So today's agenda, we're going to be talking about stress management, coping, and how to increase your satisfaction level. I'm sure as a student that you've got multiple priorities and multiple things happening in both your personal and professional life. What we're going to do is first have a presentation of about 20 to 30 minutes. Then we're going to break into 2 breakout groups. Those will be about 15 minutes each. You'll be able to talk among yourselves about today's presentation. We're going to give you 2 questions to address during that particular breakout session. And then we'll come back together for just to close up and address any other questions that you may have. So what I'd like to do is take the attention away from me, because I'm not the focus here tonight. Dr. Bergman is. She's a professor in psychology at the University of Notre Dame. She also does a tremendous amount of research in this particular area in human behavior and family studies. She's widely published, author, and I hope that she will be able to share with you some tips and tools in order for you to be able to immediately apply after this presentation itself. So I'm going to stop my share here, and I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Bergman in order to give her presentation.
I want to thank you for inviting me. I have to give you a little, they say never make an excuse before you start, but I do have COVID, and it's probably good that this isn't in person. I can't give it to you virtually, but it has affected my voice a little bit. So I'm hoping I won't have any difficulties, but if I do, I apologize in advance. So I want to start today by talking a little bit about stress. So how many of you don't have to actually raise your hand, just think about it. How many of you have ever jumped or felt your heart race when you were startled by something? Or you had clammy hands when you were at a social event and you really didn't know anyone? Or have you ever gotten goosebumps or felt like the hair was standing up on the back of your neck when you were walking alone at night after dark and maybe you heard a noise? Have you ever felt kind of sick when you had to do something that you really didn't want to do? So maybe you had to give somebody bad news. Or have you ever felt overwhelmed by all of the things that you need to do? And I'm pretty sure that we can all raise our hand as it relates to some of these different components. So you've had these feelings of stress, but how do we talk about or think about stress? So there are some different types of stress. The first one is acute stress. The acute stress sort of comes and goes fairly quickly. Maybe you have an exam that's coming up and that is making you feel stressed. But when the exam is over, hopefully, the stressor ends. What I'm going to focus a little bit more on today is what we call chronic stress. These come from situations where we have a stress response, but it's either triggered over and over again, or our bodies don't return to their pre-stress state. And these types of stressors come from conflicted relationships or overpacked schedules or financial difficulties, or maybe you hate what you're doing. I'm going to focus a lot more on this chronic stress. But there's actually a third type of stress. The question is all stress bad? And the answer is no. Eustress is considered the good stress for a reason because it keeps us feeling vital and alive and excited about living. So let's look at the relationship between stress and how we perform our day-to-day sorts of activities. So we know that stress and anxiety have a place in our lives. They push us to make necessary changes. They can enhance our performance. So if you think about an Olympic athlete, when they are experiencing that stress and arousal associated with the event itself, that enhances their physical and even mental performance. Stress also signals to us that we might be in a dangerous situation, and it inspires us to try to take some action to get ourselves out of that danger. So in this way, feelings of stress, feelings of anxiety, they're healthy, they're necessary. Without them, we may not work in our own best interest. But really, how much is too much? The point at which worry and anxiety become unhealthy is when it stops pushing us to act. This could be because we're worried about things that we don't have any control over. Sometimes we worry about things that haven't even happened yet or may not ever happen. or it's problematic when we're kind of immobilized by our stress and anxiety rather than being inspired to act. So stress can increase our performance up to a level, and then it can cause distress and decrease our ability to do the things that we need to do. So I'd like to tie it a little bit to the physiological response that we have when we're experiencing stress. So when we experience a threat, our sympathetic nervous system activates a variety of neurological, metabolic, immune, cardiovascular systems, and all of these are part of our body's fight or flee response. So the blood flow to the muscles increase, our heart beats faster to increase our blood pressure. We breathe more rapidly to oxygenate that blood. All of these things to get us ready for action. Our digestion stops. The blood is diverted from the gut to the arms and the legs. We may feel when we're stressed like we need to urinate or empty our bowels to lighten the load, so to speak. There are hormones that are released that make our blood thicker, stickier, so we would lose less if we were injured in some way. We start to sweat. Our senses begin to sharpen. It feels like time is sort of slowing down. And that is our body's ability to get us ready to fight or flee. Now, once the threat has been resolved, then our parasympathetic nervous system restores our systems to baseline. In essence, they put the brakes on our body's stress response. So when we think about the relationship between stress and health, the first step is to sort of understand our stressors. And often stress is in the eye of the beholder, because things that might stress me are very different from the types of things that would stress you. So some people think that public speaking is very stressful, others don't. So one piece of this process is understanding the stress appraisal. The second is this fight or flee response that I just mentioned. So the way in which our body is activated to prepare for a stress response. The third piece is to activate coping mechanisms, and we're going to talk a lot about these today. But our coping mechanisms aren't always successful, or when our stressors become chronic, we begin to see some very typical health type outcomes. We see increases in blood pressure, we see strokes, we see heart attacks, we see obesity and diabetes and atherosclerosis and et cetera, et cetera. So when we have high levels of stress, particularly chronic stress, then we run the risk of some very particular health outcomes. So we have this stress response that's activated by the sympathetic nervous system that's very adaptive for us in the short term. But if it's activated too long, or if it's activated too often, it can have these long-term effects on our both physical as well as mental health. So it may feel like there's nothing that you can do about your stress. You know, your bills aren't going to stop coming. We're not going to be able to put more hours in the day that's going to help you get your schoolwork done. You know, relationships are always complicated and demanding, but you actually have a lot more control over your stress than you might think. In fact, just realizing that you're in control of your life is really the foundation of managing your stress. You know, it's really about taking charge of your thoughts, your emotions, your schedule, your environment, and the way that you begin to deal with problems. So you should think a little bit about how you currently manage or cope with stress in your lives. And we're going to talk about some different solutions, some different stress responses. I want to let you know kind of up front that not every strategy is going to work for you. Not every strategy is going to work in all situations. And what I really want you to think about is this is a potential toolbox that you can use. So when you're in a stressful situation, you have options in terms of the way in which you respond. And I'm going to suggest that your ultimate goal is to have a balanced life. You need to have time for school. You need to have time for your relationships, but you also need to have time for relaxation and fun. And then the ability or the resilience to kind of hold up under pressure and meet challenges head on. So the first piece of this process is to think about adopting a healthy lifestyle. We only have to turn on the TV or listen to the news and we're blasted with the importance of diet and exercise. And I'm afraid I'm gonna have to jump on this bandwagon when it comes to dealing with stress. But let me tell you why it's important. If you're in a stressful situation, be it chronic or acute, you're gearing up to fight or flee. That's our evolutionary response to that. So if you exercise, for example, you're dissipating that physiological arousal that is associated with your stress response. And so exercising will not make your stress go away, but it will help to break that link between your stress and the physical outcomes. So physical activity is going to play a really key role in reducing stress. Another piece is getting enough sleep. And, students are always laughing at me when I say you need to get enough sleep. But adequate sleep really fuels your mind as well as your body. We've got much more understanding about the important role of sleep. Feeling tired is going to increase your stress. You may not be thinking rationally. You may make poor decisions. And so ensuring that you get enough sleep is certainly very positive in this process. Most of us kind of let our friends Ben and Jerry help us with our stress, maybe with ice cream. It's also the case that we might have a glass of wine or a glass of beer when we're feeling particularly stressed. But if eating the wrong things becomes your main coping mechanism for stress, or if one beer turns into 4 or 5, then it can certainly compromise your health, increase your weight, and then you have additional stress that stems from these effects. So one of the reasons why stress leads to these poor eating habits is because stress increases levels of cortisol. Cortisol is known as the stress hormone, and cortisol creates cravings. So your body is trying to mount a stress response, even if you're not in a threatening situation, but because of your a chronic stress situation. So it creates these cravings for especially sweet and salty snacks. The salt to increase your blood pressure, the sweets to give you the glucose that you need to fight or flee. Also makes highly fatty foods much more appealing. So our stress response actually triggers some of these poor eating habits. So, if you have a well-nourished body, you're going to be better able to cope with stress. Just be mindful of what you eat. I'm not telling you skip all the sweet and salty snacks, but keep in mind that when you're feeling stressed, part of this physiological response is a craving for these types of food. So beyond sort of these physical health related sorts of things that we can do, there are also some psychosocial types of techniques that we can use. The first one is that Stress management really starts with identifying the sources of stress in your life. And this isn't always as easy as it sounds, because some of our true stressors aren't necessarily that obvious. It's easy to overlook your own stress-inducing thoughts, feelings, behaviors. So, in order to identify your true sources of stress, you have to look really closely at your habits and your attitudes and your excuses. So, do you explain stress away as temporary? Gosh, I have a million things going on right now, even though you can't actually remember the last time you took a breather? Do you define stress as kind of a integral part of your life? Well, things are just always crazy around here. Or it's part of your personality. I have lots of nervous energy. That's all. That's why I'm feeling kind of anxious. Do you blame your stress on other people or on outside events? Or do you view your stress as being normal, unexceptional? You just need to keep in mind that you play a role in creating and maintaining your own stressful situation. So, not all stress can be avoided. And, it's not healthy to avoid a situation that you really need to address. But you might actually be surprised by the number of stressors in your life that you can actually eliminate. One is learning how to say no, knowing what your limits are and sticking to them. So if you take on more than you can handle, that's just going to be a surefire recipe for stress. Another thing is avoiding people who stress you out. If there's somebody who consistently causes stress in your life and there's no way to turn that relationship around, maybe you should limit the amount of time that you spend with them, or if you need to, end that relationship altogether. Take control over your environment. If watching the evening news makes you really anxious, then turn off the TV. Pare down your to-do list. You can look at your schedule, look at your responsibilities, look at the daily tasks that you have. And if you've got too much on your plate, then you should distinguish between what you should do and what you must do. So a lot of times we put pressure on ourselves to do things that we think we should do, but they're not actually something we have to do, may not make a difference in the long term. So if we have tasks that aren't truly necessary, we should put them at our bottom of our to-do list, or we should eliminate them altogether. If you can't avoid a stressful situation, then you can try to change it. You can figure out what can you do so that the problem doesn't present itself again in the future. And sometimes this involves changing the way you communicate or operate in your day-to-day sort of life. So it's important to express your feelings rather than just bottling them up. So if something or someone is bothering you, you should communicate those concerns in an open and respectful way. But if you don't voice your feelings, then the resentments are going to build up and the situation is going to remain the same. Irritating. You need to be willing to compromise. So if you're asking somebody else to change their behavior, then you have to be willing to do the same thing. And if you're both willing to bend at least a little, then you're going to have a much better chance of finding a happy middle ground. Be assertive. Don't take a back seat in your own life. It is important to deal with problems head on and, doing your best to anticipate or prevent them. A really important piece of this is time management. Poor time management can cause a lot of stress. We often procrastinate, We put things off until the last minute, and then they become a stressful situation. If you are stretched too thin and you're running behind, it's very hard to stay calm and focus. But again, if you plan ahead, make sure you don't overextend yourself, you can really change the amount of stress that you're under. If you can't change the stressor in some way, then you really need to change yourself. You can adapt to stressful situations, try to regain your sense of control. Maybe you do that by changing your expectations and your attitude. So how do we do that? One way is to try to reframe a problem that you have. So to try to look at a stressful situation from a more positive perspective. So I have this big assignment. I'm worried that I'm not going to be able to accomplish it. I'm really, worried, confused. I'm almost paralyzed because, I see this as being such a big hurdle. If you can reframe that in a more positive way, this is an opportunity for me. This is an opportunity for me to learn new things. These are an opportunity for me to stretch myself, to, experience things that I haven't before. So thinking about these in this is an opportunity, not a threat, is really important to, sort of changing yourself and the way you approach your stressors. You can also look at the big picture. Ask yourself, how important will this be in the long run? Will this goal, or will this stressful situation that I've sort of created and set myself, will it matter in a month? Will it matter in a year? Is it really something that is worth getting upset over? If the answer is no, then you really need to focus your time and energy elsewhere. So using kind of a scale of importance, how much difference will it make in your life? I think is a really good way to sort of change your approach to your stress. And I think focusing on the positive aspects of you, when stress is kind of getting you down, take a moment to reflect on all of the things that you appreciate in your life, including your own positive qualities and gifts. This simple strategy of, seeing your value and your worth and the opportunities that you have is a great strategy to help you better deal with stress. Another thing that we don't pay enough attention to is that beyond this sort of take charge approach, this positive attitude, we can also reduce the stress in our lives by nurturing ourselves. If you regularly make time for fun and relaxation, you're going to be in a much better place to handle life stressors when they inevitably come. So I can't stress this enough. Nurturing yourself is a necessity. It's not a luxury. And often we are the person who gets the least attention. We're always doing things for other people, but we don't spend enough time nurturing ourselves. So connect with other people, especially positive people who, make your life better. A strong support system is going to buffer you from the negative effects of stress. Do something that you enjoy every single day. Whether it be playing some video games, hanging out with a friend, working on your bike, whatever it is, set some time aside for yourself. I'm not saying set all day because you've got lots of things to do, but make sure in your schedule you're taking care of yourself. It's important to keep a sense of humor. Sometimes we just have to laugh at ourselves. And even this act of laughing is kind of like exercise. It helps to reduce this physiological arousal that is associated with stress. The final thing that we really need to do is accept the things that we can't change. Some sources of stress in our lives are just unavoidable. We can't prevent or change stressors like the death or illness of a loved one or of ourselves. We can't do something about a national pandemic, an international pandemic. In these kinds of cases, we just have to cope with our stress by accepting things as they are. And sometimes acceptance is difficult, but in the long run, it's a lot easier than railing against a situation that you really can't do anything about. So it's important that you don't try to control uncontrollable situations, the behavior of other people. Rather than stressing over what someone else is doing, we really need to focus on the things that we can control. Maybe that's the way we react to their behavior. Looking for the upside. As the saying goes, what doesn't kill us makes us stronger. And when we face major challenges, we want, again, to look at these as opportunities for growth. And as this saying says on the screen, don't carry your mistakes around with you, but use those to help you with your future problems or situations. Share your feelings, talk to a trusted friend, make an appointment with a therapist if that's what you need to do, because expressing what you're going through can be very cathartic, even if there isn't anything that you can do about the stressful situation. So perhaps Winnie the Pooh and his friends were actually had it right from the beginning. When we think about being resilient to our stressors, it's the process of adapting well in the face of adversity, be it trauma, tragedy, threats, or these significant sources of stress, even day-to-day sorts of hassles. Again, our family and relationship problems, health problems, financial stressors, school. What it means is that you're able to bounce back from difficult experiences. And as Tigger says, life isn't about how fast you run or how high you climb, but how well you bounce. And resilience isn't a trait that people either have or they don't have. It really involves your behaviors, your thoughts, your actions that can be learned and can be developed in anyone. So promise me that you'll always remember that you're braver than you believe, stronger than you seem, and smarter than you think. Thank you very much. I think we're going to break into breakout groups. And Deborah, I'll turn the screen back over to you, and I'm happy to answer any questions along the way that people might have.
Yes, that's what we're going to do now. We're going to break out into two groups, and I'm just going to punch this out to you. I'm going to give you a couple of tips of what to discuss in your groups. And if something else comes up that's more important for the group, that's fine. Certainly do that. If each of you would introduce yourself in your group, at least do a 1 minute, who you are, where you're from, what school you're from, what your specialty is, that would be great. That way you'll get to meet one another. And then also begin to discuss what kind of stress you may be, students in general may be experiencing, or what you may be experiencing. And then what suggestions or tools are you able to apply from today that we talked about? And what we'll do is we will come back in 10 minutes, 15 minutes. I'll give you a signal when that is taking place, is when you have about 1 minute left. And then, we'll convene again. So right now I am going to, where's my button here? Let me close out this. There we go. And that, so I can get my screen back here and go from there. And it seems, can you turn the controls back over to me, Dr. Bergman, because my breakout screens button is gone.
Sorry, I don't have control anymore.
Okay, all right, then I don't know where my breakout buttons, it was gone, so that's kind of puzzling. I apologize, everyone. And it is disappeared. All right, so then we're going to have to go to Plan B. All right, let's just begin to do this together as a group, since I can't break it out into separate groups altogether. So if someone, I'll just call upon someone, and then we'll go to the next person. Then you call on someone else who's on the screen and pick on that and go from there. So Daniel, would you introduce yourself and then tell us a little bit about what you're involved in? Is Daniel there?
Sorry about that.
Okay, good. If you could speak up, we're having a little trouble hearing you.
Can you hear me?
Here, oh, here, you know what? Luckily, my controls just came back in.
Yeah.
So I am going to break you into two groups, and they'll be a little more private. And we'll see you in about 10 to 12 minutes.
Okay.
Okay, it looks like everyone's coming back together again. So that's good. That's excellent. I hope you had an opportunity to talk about some interesting things with each other. Stress is a part of all of our lives, but it's even more so when you're in school, medical or dental school. That's, you know, unbelievable expectations you set on yourselves, but it's such a rewarding career that it's worth doing. So would anyone like to share any thoughts or ideas that came from your group?
This is Anita, and I think it might be helpful, Deborah, if we could have more of a dialogue or networking with folks who are physicians and other healthcare workers in IOMC, so that at least the students had their emails, such that when questions pop up, they could email each other back and forth, or either speak with each other.
Mm-hmm.
I'm quite willing to do that, and did give a student in my group my cell number and my email address. But I think that might be helpful, because every doc has their own connections, and it might be able to get them into a larger network to talk with other folks, different specialties, and even how to approach getting into the orthopedic residency of your choice, or ER residency of your choice later on when you're actually looking.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Stewart. Yeah, we'll be happy to share that information. Okay. Dr. Bergman, do you have any comments at all about the discussion groups?
I think our group was unfortunately just Dre. And so he had to get lots of quizzing and advice along the way.
Okay.
One thing that I mentioned in that group that I think might be helpful for other people to think about. Our lives right now, things seem probably very hectic and overwhelming, but many of the things in your lives are not going to change. You're not going to grow up one day and your stress is going to be gone, because that's not the way life works. But there is a kind of a theory about resilience, that you don't become resilient if you don't experience adversity. And the other is that it's an inoculation theory. That is, if we can, experience more minor stressors, we deal well with them, that gives us more skills, more confidence, and then we experience maybe a tougher stressor, but we make it through that. Again, sort of across our life, we're building a lot of important strengths. We're building tools that we're going to be able to use, because we will be experiencing more and more difficult stressors across our life.
I'm intrigued. What kind of stress as students do you feel that you're experiencing the most? Is it schedules? Is it tests? Is it what is it that you are experiencing?
For me,
I
I
can,
said that it. For me, I said that it was scheduling, and then further down the line, that will eventually lead to tests. Because if you're not uh, stringent on following your schedule, then that pushes things back, and then you may not perform as well as you would have liked on the exam.
Sure, that makes sense. That makes perfect sense. Even in a regular work day, you know, sometimes my to-do list is longer than what I can really do reasonably in one day. And then I just cause stress for myself as a whole. So, I mean, even with studying, that occurred as well. Daniel, were you going to mention something?
Yeah, I was gonna say right now the biggest stressor that I feel is financial stress.
Okay,
Like, I mean, it's not like I can't, like, I don't have money for groceries or anything like that. Like, I have support from my family, and I'm living comfortably on campus. But every time I'm looking at these student loans and how much money we're taking out, like that can really it can really put a damper on the day a little bit. Especially right now, we just got our financial aid back for the upcoming school year, and I'm looking at how much money I'm borrowing over the last 2 years, and knowing that we have 2 more years, I'm just like, man, it's a lot of money when you start seeing it on paper.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, we should do a program then also on financial planning or literacy or whatever with a couple of resources. I'm not, if someone to give you an idea of how to look at money management and what's taking place. I think that would be helpful. So that I appreciate you sharing that. And I'm sure that is a worry for you as a whole, overall. Sizable loan when you finish, what's going to happen. But hopefully your career will be rewarding enough, and other financial rewards will come with that along the way at the same point in time. Yeah. Anyone else?
The financial aspect, unfortunately, many folks in my class, minority folks, we all come in not having that financial support that you need, and you come out owing lots and lots of money. Put it to the side. You can't worry about it. All you hope is that they continue to pay your way, and that and then you get through and you make a payment plan like everybody else does and pay. So that does mean you don't get your house right away. It does mean that you don't get the car. You have to put your car off that you've always dreamed of. Secret here, my Porsche, until much later. And then, but it is doable, and you just make, it's just how it's going to be, unless you have family that can afford to pay that kind of tuition in addition to your college fees. But put it to the side, not for you to worry about at this point. Some things you wall off, and that's one of them.
Yeah. And that's very true, Dr. Stewart. I'm not a physician. I don't have a PhD, but even for my own graduate school, loans have taken place. As long as the loans were there, I was good with it, but I knew I was going to have to pay, majority of that money back. I wasn't a trust fund baby, and there was no one to pay the bills, once you finished, but I just felt my goal was important enough for me to do what I needed to do. So I know your finances are going to be much greater. But as Dr. Stewart says, you have to put it aside and focus on being great, focusing on that you can do this and you will do this. And then, at the right time, you'll address the finances at another point in time. So anyone else with any other thoughts?
well, one thing I was kind of hoping would be talked about would be like social stress. I can't speak to everybody else, but I'm in a very homogenous place without much diversity. And it's just extremely isolating and very strange at times.
Mhm.
And yeah, that's probably my biggest source of stress, is like feeling out of like not understanding the culture.
Mhm. And refresh me, Christian, where are you at?
In Rockford.
You're in Rockford, right? I'm just looking at your list right now. Yeah, you're in Rockford. Okay. Well, I think that, well, I don't know, Dr. Bergman, you should speak to the social stress or Dr. Stewart can speak to that stress as well.
Well, I went to U of I, not Rockford, but in Chicago. There were 300 students in my medical school class, of only which 10 were Black at that point in time. And maybe two Latino students. So yes, it is very isolating. And I spoke to another student earlier about that. Cultures are not understood, even in this stage and age. And I'm sure that's part of the reason we have issues with implicit bias in terms of treating patients. But that is also why I recommend, if there is, a student organization, like say for Latino students or African-American students, to find someone that is pretty much similar to you that you can have as a support buddy kind of thing, because it's going to exist. Medicine does not look like, many urban cities. So that's how it's going to be. And you will adjust. But I'm just saying, it doesn't have to be another fellow medical student. Maybe it's a dental student. Maybe it's physical therapy. So don't be afraid to look outside of that domain. And there are societies or social kind of things like Student National Medical Association. There's also one for Latino students. And then other organizations, just to find someone who may be similar to you in background, thoughts, and hopes and dreams. That's pretty much all that I can say. And I think also maybe the networking that I spoke to Deborah about earlier with docs' names, where they went to school, etc., that you could reach out to. I found that most people are quite willing to talk about their experience, because pretty much we all tell the same story. But anyway, that might help.
I guess I would just add that I think a group like this can be very beneficial. You don't have to, you guys are at different institutions, but you can get together in Zoom. You can do all sorts of things. I mean, just get together and talk about, how isolated that you might feel in the particular setting that you're in. It certainly makes it a difficult situation, though, if in addition to the, stressors they're not single entities. They're, you have multiple stressors all at the same time. So you have the stress of medical or dental school and what you're being asked to do and your schedules, and there's never enough time. You might have some financial concerns, but then if you feel socially isolated or different, you want to make sure that you find some type of venue by which you can sort of express those concerns, have those concerns validated by someone else, develop a friendship of someone who maybe has a similar experience that can be empathetic with what you're feeling. So look around here at these guys and see, and as you move forward, things that are in person, I think the whole intention, I think, behind what Deborah and Jeff and the funders are really trying to do here is help you with exactly that. They want you to be successful. They don't want you to feel socially isolated, and they're trying to help create a network that will help you feel more integrated, have a group that you can identify with, deal with, be supported by, complain to, whatever it is that feels good.
And we're going to launch the LinkedIn page very soon, just specifically for this group, so you can all connect with one another and you can talk to one another. We're going to post articles and different events and things that are coming up that are not just IOMC that you could attend or look into or whatever. So I think that could be helpful. And then Brian Willis on August 25th, he's going to talk more about the sociability and collegiality, and also, setting expectations for yourself, and how to gain more satisfaction, in certain things that are taking place. Sometimes when things are really stressful, you have to go back to doing something, whether it's a hobby or a phone call or whatever, for a few minutes of something that is pleasurable to you and enjoyable to you, and then return back to the study or the schedule or whatever needs to happen. Give yourself a little bit of a break time in order to be able to do that. And what I will do as a follow-up from here is I will, because I want to make sure that I have permission, proper permission from everyone, and I will get a group of about 5 to 10 fellows from IOMC, so that I can go ahead and give their name, their affiliation, and their email address. I'll send that to you and all the registered attendees of the program, because they're not all on today. We know that your schedules are crazy, so you may not be able to attend. Several people signed up, but they're not here. Something must have come up and they're just not able to attend. But then you can also connect with other people and what's happening. And unfortunately, I don't think any of you on this virtual program were at the June 30th annual meeting. Is that correct? I think maybe Dre, I thought that Dre was at the annual meeting.
Yes, I was there.
There you were there. So that was 100+ people for you to be able to network with, and all fellows, public health, dental schools, social agencies, child advocacy agencies, different types of specialties, major payers and providers who were at that meeting. It was a lovely event. I know that there were a lot of business cards passed between one another, and that's exactly the kind of opportunity that we want to give you, at all of the IOMC events, so that you can build a professional network as well. So we won't have another in-person event probably until September, for you to be able to have that opportunity, but there should be one in September, and definitely one in December that'll be in person. But then we will have one specific just for this mentoring and networking program late September or early October. And we hope to have at least 30 to 40 fellows at that event as well, so that you can meet with other people besides the speakers. So any other closing comments from anyone? I want to be respectful of your time. We ran over a few minutes, but that's fine. I'm here. This is most enjoyable. Anybody else?
Yeah, I do have one quick question for Dr. Stewart. She mentioned something about getting us into contact with fellows that are in ortho and ER. I was wondering if she could just repeat real quick, because I didn't catch all of it.
Yeah, well, that's why I was asking Deborah if she could get a list of the fellows that we have. That would be helpful. And the idea being that once she sends that list out, each doc has connections. My boss at Blue Cross Blue Shield is an ER doc at the University of Chicago. So it's like I link you to him and he links you to someone else. So that's what I was really thinking about. That I would actually speak to him and say, hey, I got a student who's interested in ER. Will you talk to him? And it happens all the time between colleagues. Will you talk to somebody about this? So that's what I was really speaking of.
So I'm going to need to get permission from the fellows to be able to give some of that information. But Dr. Stewart's already said she would be more than willing to help. So I'm going to send you her email address right after this. And then the two of you can connect, and then you can begin, that, extension of getting to know who you want to know. And so Christian and Devon and Oak and that, depending on who you want, what your specialty is, I'll look to see who the fellows are in your areas, or email me, and I will then connect you personally, more quickly than getting that short list, approved. So more than happy to do that for you. That's the whole purpose of this program itself. It's not necessarily the size of the group it's more important that we help you advance what your interests are and what your dreams are. That's what we want to make sure that you're aware of. So that's good. So I'll follow up then after that. So it's 7:10. Just a reminder, register for the August 25th program. It'll be posted so that registration will open on Monday. And again, Brian Willis has got a fabulous background helping students and building connections, both professionally, and through other resources that you may or may not need through the course of your study. So have a wonderful evening. Thank you for being with us, and let us know how we can be helpful to you. You know how to reach me at iomcstaff.org. Okay, I'll send you an email to do that. All right, have a nice evening, everyone. Thank you.
A quick question.
Sure.
So will the link to register be emailed to us? Is that?
Yes,
that
when
how that works? Okay.
we send out a mass communication, a digital communication. It'll have the link in that and for you to register for the August 25th program right in there, just like you did today. And then I'll send a separate email with contact names for you in order to follow up with fellows and to connect with one another. So I want to make sure that when the people that we put down, that they're going to be open and available to seeing your email in the inbox and responding to it. Because as everyone, we get a couple hundred of 500 emails a day at the association. So I want to make sure that your email address stands out to them, So I think what we'll do is also give them a list of the name of the students in the program so they can kind of eye their inbox as well, and respond accordingly. But if you don't hear from someone, just let me know, and then I'll see if I can be helpful there. Because sometimes an email is just overlooked. It has nothing to do with anything more than that. And we want to be as helpful as we can to you, through your studies. And the other thing that and you could share with me now, besides the financial, besides the social ability and having opportunities for networking, are there other topics that you want us to cover? Do you have ideas? If you want to share them now, you can, but you can also email me with your ideas as well. I'm more than happy to do that. And we're going to set up a resource page on the website for finances, and for financial planning and for other groups in that, so that you can have access to all of those things for free. You'll just have to go to the IOMC website and look for the student portal, and you'll have all the information available. We have a very busy summer ahead of us, but it's exciting for us to be able to do this for you.
Awesome.
All right.
Thank you
Good
so
night,
much.
everyone.
Bye.
And you know what? I want to Mr. Alexander is still on the here. He is the executive director and president of the funding organization for this grant. Mr. Alexander, do you want to say anything?
I'm glad we started. We've been waiting for this to happen, and I think the offer is genuine. If there are things that you need, you have to let us know. The program it's very malleable, so don't be quiet. I'm glad you were here tonight. I hope more will join in the future sessions and in the coming weeks and months. So thanks to Deborah for organizing this, and we'll keep at it.
All right. Thank you so much for your remarks and your support. Thank you, everyone. Have a
Thank you.
good evening.
Bye.
Take care.